Welcome to Season 3 of the Predator Podcast. On this podcast, we'll talk about all things predator hunting. If you're a predator hunter or wanting to become one, you're in the right place. Here's your host, Drew Schlim.
All right, guys, Predator Podcast, Season 3. I have Garrett Boelkes on today for episode 13, and he's another person that I've gotten to luckily meet through this process of having a podcast and meeting people throughout the hunting world, and I'm awfully glad I did, and I'm glad we were able to get on today. He's a hunting freak. He's a gun nut. He's just somebody who seems like whatever he's going to do it right. And I have a lot of respect for him. So I'm looking forward to sharing you guys some things about him if you don't already know him. He's had a history in the industry, videos, podcasts, other things. So you might even have talked to him if you called Dark Night Outdoors. So we're going to talk a lot about that and about Garrett. And Garrett, thanks for joining me today.
No, thanks for having me. I mean, and it's not very common. Usually when you do these podcasts, you know, it's burning the midnight oil. I asked Drew, so all the listeners know, I was like, hey man, is this going to be too early on a Saturday morning? He's like, no, not at all. He's like, I'm an early riser. So breath of fresh air. Usually when you do these, like, because a lot of times when you get into the industry, you start off and this is a moonlight profession, which works well for nighttime hunting, I guess. But you're trying to work around job and kids and practices and everything else. And it's like, hey, I can record a podcast tonight at 10 o'clock. It's like, oh, all right.
Exactly.
I guess we'll be up late, you know? But anyway, thanks for having me. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad we were able to make it work, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the things you got to share with us. So give us a little bit about your background. Tell us who you are. And like I said, some people might already be familiar, but for those who aren't.
Yeah. So you introduced me already. My name is Garrett Boelkes. You've probably maybe ran into me somewhere along the lines of the last 10 years, or I should say for 10 years of my life, I was the host and owner of Last Breath TV. It was kind of it was a cool journey. It was a neat experience. We were nationally syndicated on the Sportsman Channel. We worked with a lot of great companies in the industry like Matthews and Badlands, Kaisik Coolers, a ton of different people. Moultrie Products is one of our favorite sponsors, and I still kind of maintain those relationships today. So that part of it was very neat. I got to see both sides of the industry. Everybody starts off, I love hunting. That's where it begins. And yes, there's a lot of people that do, and then you have to somehow figure out how to create content that's engaging and attractive to other peers in the industry or in the outdoor world. I don't like using industry as a term.
Yep.
And then eventually try to turn that into, okay, how can I get some return on this? As you know, Drew, you spend so much time and money of your own to cultivate a brand and grow success. It's like, all right, I'm not trying to get rich off of these. The Michael Waddells, the Lakoskis of the outdoor industry in that aspect are very few and far between.
Yep.
You got to have that right recipe of virility and then have enough brains to invest the money you make to have a future. So with Last Breath, it turned into something really neat. We had a team of guys and gals that hunted mostly in the Midwest. We did a lot of cool trips and adventures. And it got to the point where a lot of the people, we just got to the age where your life took over and we had a crossroads. You know, you either can take the dive and go into it, or we can kind of dissolve it. So it was a very cool part of my life. A lot of memories that still live on internet and YouTube and what have you. I've got all the photos and videos from when we did those things. And then that transitioned kind of into where I am now. So I knew I wanted to do something still with business and making money. I've always been a gear geek, and you know, the thermal aspect, the firearm aspect, suppressor aspect of the world is continuing to evolve and technologically advance. So now I'm into Bravo Built. So that's my company. I'm an FFL SOT. And then with Dark Knight Outdoors, I work hand in hand with Jamie over there, which, we're one of the greatest thermal distributors, I think, in the country. So it's unique to be able to talk to people like yourself, because I get to see both sides of the spectrum. I was in your shoes, going to SHOT Show, NRA, ATA, All American Outdoor Show, shaking hands with marketing director, like, hey, let's work out a deal,
Yeah.
And so now I'm on the other side where I'm that company base, and I can see both sides of it, and I kind of sympathize on both sides of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's really cool. A little backstory too is I started working with Jamie in Dark Knight Outdoors. I had previously always watched Garrett's Last Breath TV, listened to his podcast, knew felt like I knew who he was, but I never did actually. But and then I'm working with Jamie for I think like almost a year probably, and he always talked about Garrett, and I'm like, I never knew who he was. And then one day we talked on the phone, and I still didn't know who he was. And then, like, I think maybe the second time or later in the conversation, he tells me, "Oh yeah, I used to do Last Rest TV and blah blah blah." I'm like, "No shit, you're that Garrett."
Yep.
Like, so it just kind of all came full circle for me too. And now we're talking all the time and kind of work together on stuff. And yeah, it's just fun how our paths crossed, and we're able to do stuff like this. So it's pretty cool.
And from the back seat, man, it's been fun to watch you have success, right? And like, I mean, I don't ever want to kill creative freedom or to push you off your path, but man, you've made a lot of right decisions, and I'm always here to help. Like, hey, this is where I made mistakes with Last Breath and the Hunt Cast and other things that we did.
Yep.
Like, but dude, you're on the up and up, man. People like what you're doing, so you have a voice for radio, baby.
Yeah, not a face for video, but
Oh
whoever
no,
tunes
no,
in
no,
on
no, no.
YouTube's got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, it is kind of crazy. I will say this to the listeners. You think that the outdoor, I'll say industry again, because there is an industry aspect of it. So, that part of it, people who are outdoorsmen think it's just great, big, vast industry.
Yep.
And it's really humbling when you get into the business side of things and you think of like some of the most prolific brands. We'll use one that you talk about on your show a lot, like Fox Pro or MFK. Two of the biggest names in predator calling out there. And
Yep.
it's like, man, these are the pinnacle in the industry, and yet I bet you that both of the companies have less than like 15 total employees. And I mean from the owner down to the person packing orders. And it might even be smaller than that. And it's like,
Yeah.
we as consumers look at these giants in our sector of our passion, and we're like, oh, we want to revere them like they're GM or Ford. And it's like, no, dude, it may be big in our world, but when a company says, hey, let's make a deal, it's a big deal for them. They don't have the millions and millions or billions of dollars of just free marketing funds. And so
Right.
it's just always interesting to take that step back and like, okay, the outdoor world, there's 3% of Americans that hunt. Of that percentage of them, how many of them bow hunt? How many of them coyote hunt? How many of them
Yeah.
thermal hunt? And that number just keeps chunking down smaller and smaller. And you're like, it's a pretty small world, right? So yes,
Exactly.
it's cool that we knew who each other was or that exposure was there, but it's like, man, it's actually pretty small when you
Yeah.
get into it.
No, I totally agree with you there. I mean, just as you said that, things that come to mind, like Tory Cook with MFK, right?
Yep.
Powerhouse, great successful company. He will comment on my Facebook post like, dude, I heard you talk about this in your podcast, like loved it or something. Like,
Yep.
like he's the owner of one of the most successful, sound companies out there. And he's just commenting on your Facebook post like he's just a, normal guy. He just happens to be very successful.
And that's the thing that I will say. There's a hard part about that, but then there's the good part, right? So
Yeah.
it's just like Tory Cook, he's the owner of one of the most successful predator sound manufacturers out there, and he's just a normal dude,
Yeah.
right? Like that's kind of where that allure comes in this facet, right? Like I hope that you take off and you're the Joe Rogan of the predator hunting world, right? Like, and when it comes down to it, you're still you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not some propagated thing that a marketing firm for Walmart put together. And it's like, hey, you're going to be the next Flow for Progressive. We're going to
Yeah.
make you what you are. No, you are who you are. And
Yeah.
that's the really cool thing about the industry. There are some definite duds, man. You go to some of these shows and you get invited to like these private dinners and parties because you're an affiliate with a company, and you start meeting some of the people that are there are some duds, dude.
Yep.
Now there's some dicks, right? And like
Yep.
some of them been exposed, some of them still fly under the radar, but for the most part, most of the people in this kind of category of business are pretty good folks.
Yeah. And I totally agree. That's one thing I found with just doing this is the predator hunting community is relatively small. Everybody's been super supportive, super nice when I reach out to people about coming on here, 90% of them are like, absolutely, let's do it. Of course you get a few people that have their reasons not to do it, which is fine, but just for the most part, just everyone's been super supportive and helpful, and well, like, yeah, let's jump on and do it. And then like you said, I jump on with people, and like I just find that they are just salt of the earth, like just great down to earth people. Like even sometimes where I've been a little starstruck, having Al Morris and John Collins and Jeff Nimnick
Yep.
and these guys on, and then you start talking with them and you feel like you've known each other for 20 years and you guys are just cutting it up and shooting the breeze, and it's just been a fun experience for me.
Now let me ask you this: have you ever? So there's a couple things we did the Last Breath Huntcast, right? And
Yep.
we had a couple guests that I reached out to that asked what it paid, right? And we're like, whoa, I'm not paying you. Like I
Right.
was taken back by that. Have you had anybody do that yet?
No, I
Okay.
haven't.
And then I've only had one, we only had one episode that we had to edit. And I won't say who the person was, but they were, a very limelight star. And man, they just tripped over some of the simplest basic questions. We were more whitetail oriented, but
Yeah.
have you ever had to edit or cut stuff up to make somebody
Yeah.
look? You have?
I have a couple like minor things. I've had a couple times where people said something that they maybe didn't mean to say, or something
Sure.
just slipped out in the conversation because we're just kind of two dudes,
Yeah.
BSing, like, and things that maybe slip, and they'll be like, "Ooh, I shouldn't have said that," and I'm like, "It's, I'll edit that out, no problem." Like,
Sure. Sure.
but yeah, it
That's good.
happens.
It does, it does. But I like, the format that most people are running in this sector. It's just like, this is raw. It's a
Yep.
conversation, like it says, two guys, two gals, guy and a gal, whatever. They're just talking about it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we can get into a little bit of the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
Sure your listeners know. So but they know about Last Breath. You want to watch me shoot some stuff, you can go check it out. Right. Cool. But I just feel like I've come to the synopsis that as long as I can use this finger, I'm a really happy guy, right? Like I don't I love bow hunting, but I love gun hunting. I'm not discriminate. I have like concepts of what I think is bounds within archery equipment, within firearm and muzzleloader. But I mean, man, I I've killed some really nice whitetails, killed
Yeah, you
elk,
have.
mule deer, antelope. I'm in a point in my life where I'm like a yes man. If somebody says, hey, I'm going to go on this trip to hunt it, like, do you want to go? If I've got the time and the free capital, yeah, let's do it. Right. So, I, I'm pretty lucky. The most recent trip I did was down in Florida, alligator hunting. And man, I hooked into a giant down there.
Yes,
Have
you
you
did.
fished much, Drew?
I fished. Yeah.
So you're in Wisconsin, right? Like you
Yeah.
fish all the time. You probably caught some big catfish or maybe a sturgeon or something
Yep.
up there. Dude, I can't explain what it's like hooking onto a truck, man.
Yeah.
You
How big
know,
was that thing?
so he's 12'2" and he was over 700 pounds. He had 55 inches of girth. And so the listeners can hear the story. We go down to Florida and I guess it's a predator. Maybe I'll tie into your podcast. I
Yeah,
won't
it
take up
is
too much of your time.
it is a predator.
But we were supposed to be in a boat fishing like the backwaters of Lake Okeechobee. It was 36 degrees that morning when we were down there. Crazy cold for Florida. And like the guys were like, there's not going to be any alligators in the water. We're going to have to fish them on the banks. He's like, they'll be sunning next to canals and on beaches out of the wind, just trying to warm up. So we had this giant offshore fishing reel that literally had 330 paracord on it for line. It was not fishing line. Okay. And there's a treble hook about the size of like, a normal grown man's fingers with a small weight, about a 3-ounce weight on the bottom of it. And since they weren't in the water, we would have to legitimately put a stalk on them and then try to cast this weight over them to snag them. So with it being as cold as it was, the hunting was kind of difficult. And I was really surprised how skittish the gators were and other things that I didn't know. Like, I mean, shoot, man, I don't ever hunt alligators, right?
Yeah.
You had to keep mind of the wind. We talk about predator hunting wind,
Yeah.
100%. Like wind is king. Same thing with alligators. We've never guessed it. Their eyesight and their hearing is, it's okay, maybe a 5 out of 10, but they have very sensitive, like, pads all across the bottom of their body, so they can feel vibrations really well. And it's actually come to learn that's how they really communicate. If you ever watched videos of like alligators or crocodiles calling, the water will ripple around them.
Yep.
So they sense those vibrations. So when you're walking up on it, you get your wind right, and then you got to like sneak up old tenderfoot style,
Yep.
and I've fished. My dad fished a lot, right? But it's like I'm using this reel that's literally like 10 inches in size. You got to try to
Yep.
thumb 330 paracord. So I was 0 for 4 trying to snag some. And on the bank too, like if they're on the water, you just rip it straight over them. Doesn't matter if it's 50 feet over them or 10 feet over them, right? The weight will fall down and you can reel in and snag them. But on shore, you kind of have to hit it. You have to get over their back, but you can't go too far. You just get caught in the foliage and weeds and
Yep.
everything. So I finally, we were in this high rise. It was almost like a safari style truck
Yeah.
where we were pitched up high and we're driving around, and the one that I had snagged, we saw, and we could just see a little bit of him. And the guys are like, "Hey, he's a good one. Like, go after him. He's definitely within the slot that I wanted to get." And when I had gone up there, I just saw his tail like slip in the water. Well, it happened to be that the canal was actually semi clear there, and I could see him walking on the bottom. I knew he was nice. I didn't know he was that nice, right? I literally just like flipped like pitching a jig like right over him,
Yeah.
right? And set the hook. And dude, he drug my feet in. It was all white sand, right? Like ski marks in the sand. And then the guides come up and it was all hell broke loose. We fought him for like 40 minutes. I shot him with a 223. It didn't kill him. Then I had to shoot. The guy was like, "Get the big gun." This other kid goes running the truck, brings me a Ruger number 1 30-06, and finally shot him with that and hauled him up to shore. But it was a pretty cool experience, right?
Yikes. I cannot imagine that fight. I mean, I saw the pictures though. That thing was absolutely huge.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's a beast. So what about you? Got I mean, you've been doing quite the tour here, but
Yeah.
outside of predator hunting, I see a whitetail on the wall. What else do you do, man?
Whitetail, elk. I haven't shot an elk yet, but I've been on some successful trips with buddies and whatever, and been out. I love to go out and backpack hunt elk. Just take off into the backcountry and disappear for 5 days. That's one of my favorite, especially the elk rut is undefeated. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing to me that compares to, a day like coyote piling into the call is a
Right.
bull elk in the rut. I've hunted mule deer, bears. I guess I hunted bears. I probably could draw another tag in Wisconsin here soon, but I honestly I think I would rather go out west and hunt bears in the mountains, but because we got bears, lots of bears in Wisconsin, north of where I'm at, but
Right.
so
It's
I
a
could
different
draw.
style of hunting, like
Yeah.
your northern and northeastern style of bear hunting. It's obviously it's thicker country and it's over bait.
Yep.
And it's fun, but like you said, out west, man, you're getting it. That's the
Yeah.
thing that I love about the Western style of hunting is, and I don't mean to degrade anybody that's had success by just having
Yeah.
a deer or something walk in front of them, but in the Midwest, you can get lucky. A lot of people do get lucky, but you can't cheat the mountain. You
No.
know, like the number of people that just happen to have a big bull or a big buck or a big boar walk out in front of them on the mountain over there is slim to none, you
Yeah.
know? So that's the thing that I like. It's manifest destiny out west. Like, okay, I found them. Now I got to try to get in a position to get them with
Yeah.
whatever you got, whether it's a rifle or a bow. It's not just, a sure thing. Where here, I feel like a lot of the hunting in the Midwest is more educated ambushing. And
Yeah.
I like it. I love it. I mean, that's why I think about it all the time, but it's just
Yep.
totally different trains of thoughts.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I just think that hunting the mountains just is so humbling. Like
Yeah.
it almost like it doesn't I'm not saying hunting here is easy by any means, but it makes that walk to your tree stand, that drag, that stuff that you thought was hard previously
Yeah.
now is just like, yeah, let's just go do it. It'll be quick. Like
Right.
that's not a big deal. Like after
Quick.
packing an elk out with two guys, from 3 miles, back, taking a whole day, 2 trips, 12 miles, like
Yep.
that is what that changed me. Like now I'm like, I am not afraid to go as far and around to get to that tree stand as I need to get. I'm not
Yep.
afraid to, that stuff doesn't scare me. Guys are like, oh, that's so much work. That's so hard to walk that 700 yards to that tree stand and get into it. Like, no, this is a cakewalk and I'll do that any day.
Amen. I think you can learn from any hunting experience you do. And I think when I go try to go out west every year, and it's changed the way that I whitetail hunt in a couple different regards. First off, like my biggest thing with walking into the deer stand was always I'd get too hot. It's very
Yeah.
cold here, and you sit. Where out west, you're always active. You get cold, well, then we'll walk up to that other ridge and glass. By the time I get there, my body's warmed up. So it changed the way that I use my gear. I layer way differently now
Yeah.
in
Agreed.
the Midwest. And then it's totally changed my concept on like scent control. I think that no matter what you do, if you run an ozone generator or scent killer or cover scent, like if an animal is downwind of you and they are wanting to try to wind you, if they're aware of a threat, your opportunity to fool them is almost zero. It is zero. Now I think you can get away with an animal that's cutting through, that's not paying attention to you, they're just meandering. It's like anything. If I tell you there's a danger over there and you're trying to find it, you'll find it. But if you're just walking to Walmart to get to your grocery store, like right, your food plot, and you're don't even pay any attention, you might not pick it up. So going out west, like just like you said, you get dirty, bloody, muddy, sweaty, and when
Yep.
you're living out of your backpack, you got one change of clothes. You
Yep.
lucky if you got a dude wipe bath at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
so, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you can just eat pizza in your deer stand and not have any counter effects to it. But if an animal's downwind you and they want to wind you, they're gonna.
Yeah. I actually, that's one thing that did change for me too. I used to send away, spray all my stuff down, wash
Oh
my
yeah.
clothes, do all this stuff, my truck, my everything. Now and I mean this not again, like I respect the animal. I think they're one of the hardest things to kill is a mature whitetail buck that knows his surroundings.
Yep.
But I don't even like my clothes will be sitting on the floor. Like I'll
Oh
wear
yeah.
them out cutting up deer. I'll whatever.
Yep.
I'll no. I I do absolutely zero scent control to go to the deer woods now, and it's the same thing with predators too. Actually,
Hmm.
predators are one of the things that helped me change that too. Was like you're never gonna defeat a coyote's nose. Like
Never.
if they want to smell you, they will. I
100%.
actually had last week had it happen to me that a coyote came through my wind and kept coming. It was the first time in my lifetime that I've knowingly seen one come through my wind and keep on coming. And I
Mm,
cannot figure out why or what like made it do that. If it just there was some traffic and some weird stuff going on. I don't know if it just kind of lost in the shuffle.
sure.
But it was definitely a unique experience, and that's the only time I've ever seen that happen to me, where I knowingly watched them come across my wind and just
That's
keep
wild.
coming.
And like you said, the reason why I feel like more times than not, you can't fool a predator because you're calling them into you. They're aware of
Yeah,
where you're at. They're already
right.
going, okay, there's something over there, and they're gonna come downwind. It's a given, right?
Yep,
Like so, that's hey, take them when you get them, man. You got a dumb one, baby. That's all right.
exactly,
Did you kill it?
exactly. Actually, we missed it, but I,
What?
I
Oh
could
man.
not believe it. I was kind of back to the right and I was watching and I was thinking to myself, we just called in the dumbest coyote in Wisconsin
Yeah.
and we didn't get it killed, but uh it was whatever, it happens. But let's talk a little bit more about your
Yeah.
Bravo built and your role with Dark Knight Outdoors and that kind of your business life.
Yeah. So Bravo built, I'm an FFL SOT. I can buy anything, sell anything short of a tank. And it's kind of interesting when you get your licenses, right? You get to meet with the ATF and everybody kind of has this idea of who they are and what they do. And there is definitely a strict system to be able to get the licenses to be able to have fully automatic weapons and incendiary rounds and short barreled rifles and crazy fun stuff like that. Really, no application in hunting. But to be completely honest, really the path to getting this started due to our unconstitutional state government in Illinois.
Yep,
And I'm like, okay, our governor wants to try to ban weapons that shouldn't have any reason to be banned. I'm going to fight the system. I'll play the system, right? I'll just get the license in so I can have whatever I want. Got that, and then I'm like, okay, I'm covered. I do whatever I need to do. And for the first year, I really didn't utilize them in a business aspect, but through just word of mouth, right? Friends started wanting to buy stuff, and you realize that you can cut your buddies in some deals and other things, and it turned into like, all right, well, let's make a run at this. And so, it's still not a giant thing for me. I
yeah,
sell quite a few firearms, and really suppressors is kind of my bailiwick. I'm in a sweet spot where obviously I can't sell to anybody in Illinois. Again, ridiculous. I think every firearm owner should have a suppressor. It's
agreed.
We can get into that in a little bit, but the thing is that I send all my suppressors out of state. And so given the IRS laws, like as long as I don't reach a certain threshold within a state, my customers don't need to pay sales tax. So it's
Yep,
a pretty little nice amenity to a lot of my customers. I do a lot of business in Iowa because I'm just a hop, sip, and a stone throw away. Colorado, just because of my connections out there and word of mouth, it's spread pretty good. So Nebraska, Texas, and Oklahoma are a couple other big states. But um, Bravo Built's just I'm actually in the process of becoming a certified gunsmith, and so with that, I'm probably going to be getting a lathe and chart to turn barrels and actions together. But that's going to be a little bit down the road.
yep.
With Dark Knight Outdoors, though, so Jamie was on our podcast with Last Breath, and that's how I met him. We used to have a huge show in the Quad Cities, and we call it the Last Breath launch party. So we would showcase 3 episodes before they'd air to the networks. It's completely free. We gave away beer. We would get 10 kegs of beer and it'd run out every year. We'd get like 3,000. It was the wildest thing ever. And like it was rowdy. You get 3,000 rednecks packed into a theater, man.
Yep,
And we gave away shirts, camo, bows, trail cameras,
yep.
I mean, tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear. We just throw them out to there. And so Jamie had come to those, and then we did the podcast, and he's like, "Hey, I need a little help, right, on a couple different facets." And so now it's turned into where really I care as much about Dark Knight Outdoor success as I think anybody, and we're doing some really cool things, and expect big things to come before next season. But with that now, with me being on the team and also helping just defray some of the load from Jamie, like we do the Dark Knight Outdoors Thermal Invitational. It was a huge success. Last year was our first one. We're doing it again this year in September. It's again free to our guests who would like to come. We showcase all of the stuff that the thermals that we stock. So I mean, quite literally, just short of 100 different optics that you can look at, compare, and test. We do raffles. We do actual giveaways there. The shooting competition was a huge hit last year. So we're going to be doing that again. And I think that if anybody's within a 3-hour radius, man, it's worth your time to come to this event. It's free. We feed you. We drink you within reason. We don't want you to get shit faced on our dime. But there's a
Yep.
lot of fun stuff that we do. We're doing a thermal calling seminar this year as well. And again, if you're in the area and you're either a seasoned vet or you're thinking about getting into it, I would try to make an appearance at it.
Yeah, and I am going to be there this year. So I was unable to make it last year. conflict schedule, but I'm going to be there this year, so I'm looking forward to that too. That's going to be fun.
Maybe we'll make you a guest speaker, huh?
Oh boy, no
Oh
pressure.
yeah. But yeah, so anyway, that with Dark Knight Outdoors, I think we are proud to work with Drew, right? Like you do a great job for us, and I mean that sincerely. But I think everybody really knows what DNO is. We've got all major brands of thermal products. I think where we separate ourselves from really anybody in the industry is our willingness to give the customer service that others won't. Like, you know, going back to the size of a company, right? We've got multiple employees here, but one thing is like when it gets busy and hot, like we can't answer all the phones. The phone lines are all tied up. We
Yep.
always call you back. And the other thing is too, is like we listen to our customers. You'll find that when you call somebody, there's people who ask for advice and then people who ask for affirmation. They're genuinely asking what optic best fits them for their needs. And then there's somebody who's asking me like, I really like this optic. Is this going to be what I think it is? And so it's our job just to tell them the dead honest truth, right? Even if that maybe means not getting a sale or selling them a cheaper scope. But ultimately, like you can either get a sale or you can get a customer. And I think that's the big difference when we look at how we go about to approach our sales. Like, we're here to win your business for as long as you want a thermal hunt, not just for one transaction.
Yep. Yep. I totally agree with that. And that's one thing, like, that's why I chose to work with Dark Knight Outdoors was because of the service and that's how my interaction, my first experience with Dark Knight Outdoors was not reaching out saying, hey, work with me. My first interaction was working with Jamie, buying something, renting something, and I was so impressed with him and everything that went with it that I was like, man, this guy is awesome. Like his service is, I can see the writing on the wall here. This guy's gonna be huge, and so obviously that's when I jumped on board a couple of years ago, and I'm happy to be there. And I just, I think very highly of both of you guys, and I have utmost confidence that every single person that wants to call, that I suggest to call you guys, is they're going to be taken care of. And
Yep.
that's a huge part of it for me too, is just knowing that if I'm going to suggest something or, or recommend something, that it's not going to fire back on me. And,
Right.
you guys just knock it out of the park. So sometimes I don't know how you guys do it and keep up with all the phone calls, but you guys do it. And
Oh man. And Jamie's wild, dude. Jamie, so if you got a gun question, you call me. Caliber cartridge, reloading, anything, you name it, suppressor, you want something just to take the concussion away, you want it to be popcorn fart quiet, like I'm the gun guy. You want to upgrade your trigger, talk to me. But and I know a ton about thermals, but when I say a ton, Jamie is like the bird man, the rain man
yeah,
of freaking thermals. He knows
yep,
everything. And remember stuff that has been discontinued for like 3 or 4 years. He is the man when it comes to that. So a lot of the technical questions that we get, I mean, if I can't field them, I shoot them right over to him, and he's just like rattles them off. His brain is just wired to memorize the specs, tricks, and then even
yep,
the menus, man.
yeah,
Well, I've looked through a lot of optics, field tested a lot of optics, but Jamie he can rattle off. Oh, go to this, touch this, 2 punches, dial down, whatever. I'm like,
yep.
holy crap, man, you're there.
Yeah,
So
he did that for me one time. We were out hunting one night on a Friday night, like 8 o'clock, and we
yep,
were having an issue with a scanner. And I called him, I'm like, "Hey, this is what's happening. How do I change this in the menu?" And he literally was like, "Just this. This is where it is in the menu." Bang! I'm like, oh, yep, that's it. Got
right,
it.
right. And I mean, I am not proud enough. I mean, I'm humble enough to say that, like, dude, if you called me for that question, like, hold on, let me look it up.
Yeah,
Right. Let me go grab one and run you through it. That's where, again, Jamie's just next level with that stuff. So,
yeah,
well, let's talk about coyote hunting. Okay. First off, I
yes,
have like, holy smokes, man, you have been on a tear.
yeah.
Like, do you have any idea what you're up to for the season? Do you quantify your coyotes annually, January to January, or do you quantify them more like season, like October to May?
So I quantify mine from April 1st. I mean, technically April 1st until March 31st. So, but I'm not obviously hunting them in April, but
Right.
I count
I
them.
just
I count them. Okay, so as a predator hunter, I think and as a deer hunter, so I know there's a vast range of people that predator hunt, but as a Midwest, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, a lot of people that coyote hunt, I think are probably deer hunters or bow hunters or whatever,
Yep.
right? Um, I view this as how many fawns can I save, going into next year, right?
Right.
So that's why I count and our license year in Wisconsin for predator hunting is our license ends March 31st. So I've always counted it as like how many coyotes can I kill post fawning or post, you know, denning season, post pups in the ground. How many can I kill from there to the next season? I basically follow the coyote life cycle, which whatever, but and in my eyes, like I'll be like, okay, I've killed 9 coyotes off my deer property, so I know that I've killed 9 off that one property to, save some of my deer for next year. Uh,
Yep.
so I view it kind of like that, but yeah, I'm having my best year yet. And it's funny because you hear and see everywhere, everybody's saying how there's hunters everywhere. Everyone has a thermal. All the coyotes are educated. All my spots are getting taken by other people. All these. I'm not saying some of those things aren't true, and they are happening, but I'm not saying. But I also don't view any of those things as a determining factor to deter me from being successful. And I feel like if you are going to quit or blame that on you not being successful, then it's just a willpower thing. And,
Right.
yeah, of course, coyotes are more educated. There's more people doing it. But if what I think is the good people, the people that are really, really good at killing them, are going to continue to kill them and continue to kill more of them. And the people who are not good at it or don't want to be good at it are going to either quit or continue to struggle.
I
And
agree. I agree.
so and I'm reading all this stuff on Facebook just this week. Like people are making these big posts that are getting shared hundreds of times about how $1,000 thermals are ruining the sport and all this stuff. Here I am having my best year ever killing coyotes. Whether it's Kansas, I've been to Kansas, Texas. I know people will say, "Oh, you've killed so many because you've been to Kansas and Texas and whatever." We killed 7 coyotes in Texas. Like we killed we whipped up on the gray fox, but we only killed 7 coyotes. Like we didn't
Yep.
see a ton of coyotes in Texas. So no, the Texas thing isn't an excuse. Kansas is unbelievable, yes, but I'm gonna kill more coyotes in Wisconsin, or I already have killed more coyotes in Wisconsin than I ever have, and I'm gonna kill more than I ever have. I'm worried I'm never gonna beat this number. So uh we'll see, but yeah, I was just thinking about this week as I saw all this stuff. I'm thinking, man, I'm having my best year ever. Like
Yep.
and I'm dealing with the same thing. Heck, I'm helping get people into thermal, right?
I know, right?
I'm helping people learn. I'm telling people what sounds I'm using. I'm telling
Right.
people what sequences I'm using. I'm giving people every single detail of what I'm doing. And
Yep.
I'm still out there killing more than I ever have killed.
So I had a really cool conversation with a guy, and this is going to pertain to whitetails, but I think it's going to tie into what you're talking
Yeah.
about. And he said, Garrett, he's like, because we were sharing something similar to this, where you hear guys that always, and I'm just going to call it what it is, make an excuse for not being successful.
Yep.
And there's a host of them, right? And just like you said, there's validity to some of it, but then there isn't on the other side. And he's like, I believe that less than 10% of the deer hunters kill over 90% of the big mature deer. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about in this side of things. Like you're going to have a fraction of a fraction, a percentage of people that really apply themselves to be the best predator hunters they are. They're going to figure out what setups work, how to hunt the ground, how to get more property, what it may be, and they're going to be the ones that are successful. But then you have another large group of people that maybe they enjoy it. Like there's a lot of people that enjoy hunting, but maybe aren't going to go to that level of crazy, I'll say,
Yep.
that you're at to
Yep.
be that successful. So I I have it in my notes here to talk about that, like how it's definitely changing as thermal hunting or night hunting, I should say, becomes more popular and more affordable. But to echo what you just said, I think if you want to be successful, you're gonna find ways to be successful, and more so than the year before, and the year before, and the year before, just like what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, and you see the stuff like, oh, everyone's gonna have 3 properties to hunt. Coming up here, the way that everyone's hunting, um, you know, it's gonna be just like deer hunting pretty soon. It's gonna be impossible to find a spot to hunt and blah blah blah. Like, I guess to me, it's like, okay, so if I have, just throwing a number out there, random number, I have no idea how many spots I have to hunt. I don't even know how I would begin to count that. But if I had 40 spots to hunt and I lost 4 of them because uh the neighbor's
Landowner got
the
into it, their
neighbor's boy
grandkid.
bought
Yeah.
a thermal, or I had to share a spot with 4 of, whatever. To me, we have a choice as hunters to either grow the sport or the sport's going to be gone. There's the population that wants us to not hunt and wants to take hunting away from us is so massive, that we're up against, that we can't afford to go against each other.
Yeah, I think I don't like to use, and I know it's a common term. Like hunting to me is more than a sports. It's
Yeah.
like a passion. It's a part of what I do, right?
Yep.
And Michael Waddell talked about that, and he did a really good job explaining that. But I totally agree with what you're saying. And unfortunately, though, man, I'll tell you what. When it comes to hunting, I don't know if there's any other actual sport that breeds jealousy like this one.
Yeah.
It's wild, man. Like
Agreed.
there can be somebody that's just a stud athlete and he's making records left and right. There'll be a couple people that are like, whatever. But dudes, you have a 200 coyote year and people are calling you out for baiting or what, it's
Yeah.
like, holy smokes. There is few things that breeds jealousy like the outdoors. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, man, but it is definitely there. There's that stigmatism that's always going to be there.
Yeah. I agree. And I don't know what it is about predator hunters, but I
Yeah.
see stuff all over Facebook and all over social media and hear it in person. Like, it seems like there's such a division, is always this competition of who can kill more, who can kill, this, who can do this. Oh, you hunt them with hounds. Oh, you hunt them with thermal. Oh, I day hunt them, oh, you shoot too
Right.
far. You this, like, there's so many things that it seems like people choose to divide each other over,
Oh
instead
yeah.
of just like, hey, we're all hunters. Let's all support each other and let's all work together. Like, I just don't see why. Like, I've had people throw digs at me over thermal
Mhm.
hunting, or over, or hound hunters that don't like that I hunt, at night, whatever, or that I call them, whatever. But it's just, to me, it's just strange. It's, there's always a division in deer hunting, I think, a little bit. Like right now, the crossbow thing has a lot of heat to it, right?
Oh yeah.
Which, not that all things are wrong, but um it seems like in predator hunting there's so much more division over these little tiny things of like what separates people, and I just cannot understand why I wouldn't be supportive of growing the sport. And they'll blame influencers and podcasters. I saw the thing blaming podcasters and influencers and YouTubers and industry people and all this stuff, people wanting to get rich off of it. And it just, to me, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like where a lot of that comes from is somebody who's been upset with their experience.
Yeah.
You, and I mean, man, I've had tons of bad hunts. Go
Yeah.
out and it's like I'll push for 4 hours and be like, dude, I've killed one coyote. What the heck's going on? Sometimes it's just the way that it is. You've all had those dead nights, and if you
Yep.
haven't had one yet, it's coming,
Yeah.
right? But like I feel like a lot of that comes from it's a vomit on a keyboard, right? They're
Yeah.
upset, they're pissed off, they want to point the finger at somebody or
Yep.
something, even if they didn't do anything wrong, right? Like again, we've just said we've gone out, we've done the same thing we've done successfully 50 times and fell short. Like I think some people just need to get it off their chest. And unfortunately, like a guy like you, Drew, you live and you see it 10 times more than somebody else, right? You get it from all different angles, and you're almost
Yep.
in your own little echo chamber of it. So you get
Yep.
to see the exposure of that tenfold to other people. And you're right. I mean, it's disappointing, but I think it'll always be there. And it's in
Yep.
that way. It's in predator hunting, whitetail hunting, elk hunting, mule deer, all of it, right? I do think it's going to be interesting. Like there's that big crossbow versus compound bow
Yep.
thing. Like I foresee that happening with like daytime and nighttime. Like you can kind of feel that
Yeah, I
tension
already see
building.
it happening. Like
Yeah.
I already hear and see guys arguing over it and
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, so okay, let's talk about like the stuff that I'm using right now.
Yep, that
So
was just what I was gonna say. Let's see what you do.
yeah.
Let's hear what Garrett does.
Well, I build custom ARs. I have my manufacturer's license with Bravo built, and I really enjoy it. And I love gas guns. But it's kind of interesting when we talk about like what guns I'm using now in my setup. It's definitely changed. So I think guys that run ARs, no issues, right? And modern day ARs, if they're built right with good components, they can be extremely accurate. For a long time, I think there was some truth to this idea that ARs can't shoot as accurately as bolt guns,
Yep.
and I still think that to a degree they can't. But I mean, man, at the level of shooter that I am right now, I think some of the guns that I've built, like I can't shoot better than the guns, right? I think the biggest thing to consider with a gas gun when you run that setup are two things. Like most guys like to run suppressed. Most ARs, unless you're running some type of piston system, they're going to be dirty, man.
Yeah.
Like, and
Very.
dirty ARs, if you don't maintain them, you're gonna have a failure at some time. Like, and it's failure to fire. And when that costs you a coyote, a bobcat, a fox, it's not a fun thing. The other thing is, I think they're inherently louder. You have that action in them, and so you're never going to get the sound mitigation that you would out of a bolt action suppressed rifle. But for a while there, I had built a 224 Valkyrie, and I put a custom BSF barrel on it, and I had a reload. And I think that Valkyrie cartridge is actually really interesting. There's a lot of talk about the new 22 arc, and it's a good cartridge. But what Hornady did is they took Federal made the Valkyrie, and they made it to be, really ballistically coefficient superior, shooting
Yep.
big heavy bullets, right? So they're great for killing paper, but don't have a ton of energy. Well, they took that and they made the arc, which is almost identical casing. It just is a lighter bullet. So if you have the barrel that can do it, you can hop that Valkyrie up to shoot faster than the arc.
Yep.
So I ran that, killed a ton of coyotes, till hogged with it, everything else. It's back there, actually. I called that build Dolos, which is a Greek god of deception. And so now, though, I'm running a 2250. I think like when it comes to coyotes and especially nighttime hunting, I like to have a round that's faster, flatter, and carries energy a little bit further. There's a lot of really cool technologies that are coming out to help people with their drop, their ballistic calculators that are integrated into the units. But I'm running a 22 250. I've got a Bergara upper that I put a chassis on, and I reload that with a 50 grain Armageddon bullet, and I'm shooting it at like 4150, 4,150 feet per second. So it's fast, and that Bergara does have a 24-inch barrel. So if I'm hunting over in Iowa or Colorado and I twist my can on the end of it, I got myself a long piece of equipment, but it's nice. And I found myself, Wayne and I personally, we both, my hunting partner, and I hunt with a guy named Jim. So Jim's my Illinois buddy and Wayne's my Iowa buddy. If we are both hunting, like we've noticed that with an AR, your just knee-jerk reaction is always to touch that shot off again.
Yep.
And with a bolt gun, you have not that we never calculated our first shot. It's that follow-up shot. We've now eliminated shooting runners unless it's a cripple. And so we found, suppressed or unsuppressed, that second coyote or one of the coyotes in that group will almost always stop. And our ability to knock down that coyote, even though he may be further, but standing still, significantly greater than shooting a runner. So my firearm setup has changed from an AR platform to a bolt gun for a couple different reasons, both caliber handicaps, not that you can build an AR in any caliber you want really, but that style of thing, to noise mitigation to just comfort of use, and then actually like that mental aspect of touching it off and dumping it.
Yep, I could not agree more. I shoot a 22-250 bolt gun for the
Yep.
same exact reason. And I found myself in the exact same thing. I just don't take those knee jerk pull the trigger. I literally hunted with my 22 Nosler, this year for a lot early in the season, and I did that. Like I shot one at like 40 yards one time. There was a whole bunch of coyotes, and I just started rattling off at the other one. And I'm just
Yep.
like, why did I do that? Like,
Right.
and I know not to do it, and I know that I shouldn't do it. There's 8 other coyotes out in front of me, and here I am blazing at this one.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it frustrated me so much. And like I said, I know better, but it's something about having that magazine full of ammo
Yep.
just makes you. And like I said, I always tell people this. I told somebody this one time. They're like, "Dude, that's just you. Like that's just a you problem." And I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe it is just a me problem, but I know myself well enough to know that I need a bolt gun
Yep.
because otherwise, I'm just gonna shoot all my bullets, and it's unnecessary." So
Yep. Yep. I, I, I would say whoever that said it isn't, give them a gas gun and be like, all right, let's go put you on, a squad of coyotes and see how you handle it.
yeah,
It's so hard not to, man. And
yeah,
I think just that little mental break from taking your hand off of that bang switch and throwing that bolt, like it's just that little
yeah,
reset you need to be like, all right, dude, calm down. Like
yeah,
he's gonna stop, right? Let the caller do the work, or let your howls do the work, whatever you're doing to get him to check up. So I don't know. Yeah, so
yeah,
anyway, that's my gun. On the bottom, I know you're running the same tripod, the DNO Big Dog.
yeah,
I'm kind of partial to this. This was my brainchild. I had told Jamie, like, we needed to look into this, and with the company that we chose to go to war with in the tripod category. And I'm also a huge fan of the inverted leg. Like, I know for a while the 3-legged style was popular, and I'm like, you and I are both pretty tall guys, right? And it's like,
yep,
I hated having to bend almost all the way over to articulate it. And then when you have those 3 legs, that bottom section is really tiny. I mean, even if you go with a beefy one. So our big dogs, it's an inverted leg tripod. I mean, you can be 6'6" and not need an
yep,
extension post on this thing. Um, it's incredibly lightweight. It's all carbon fiber, 10 wrapped weave. I mean, you've talked about them before. You did a review on them, but that's
yep,
what I'm running. I run a hammock. I have to run a hammock on mine. Um, I have a chest rig that I've assembled. I run like a marsupial gear style. I've got a couple pouches. I got a holster that sticks underneath it. I carry a SIG 322 as a finisher. And then I'll keep extra bullets on one side, and I'll keep extra batteries on the other. And then on the very bottom pouch, I've just got an extra flashlight if I need it. And so also on the front of it, I have a radio pouch. So I'll stick my Fox Pro collar in there. But when I'm calling, I do not like to have that coming in and out of my chest rig. I set my collar remote on my hammock. And that does a couple things. First, it doesn't ever let me get very far away from my gun. So
yep,
you start scanning and you walk, or whatever. And now all of a sudden you're like 3 feet from your
yep,
gun. And then the other thing is too, is especially when you run suppressed, if you run a really good suppressor like that, the remote is what activates your Fox bang if you decide to
yep,
run it. Different times of the year I run it and with different sounds,
yep,
but I found too that I can have that nice happy medium of not being so sensitive that if you freaking brush your remote, it goes off, to where it also picks up that noise. And it
yeah,
also picks up my partner's shot a lot better than if it's on my chest rig. So
yeah,
yeah, that's what I'm running. As far as my scope, I've got the TX60 on my 22-250 right now. On the other one that I have built, I've actually been running the Hybrid 75. And man, it's kind of like falling off the radar. Dude, that scope is so nice, man.
yeah.
Holy smoke. Have you ever hunted with one?
No, but my buddy that went to Texas with me, he runs one a lot, and he still swears by it and loves
It
it. And
it's it is badass, man. I mean, like I said, the TX60, whew, I mean, you know how good it is, right?
yep,
It's awesome. But after running and killing some stuff with this hybrid, it's like, man, it's overlooked. And I think it's going to come back in popularity once things kind of level out. You know how the thermal game goes, but
Yep.
that's what I'm doing. And even though I'm a knock picks IRA guy, I will say, like, I hate to kind of throw one brand out. I kind of like that feel, that look, the style. For my scanners, I'm a binoculars guy, and I think it's because I live in them so much in the whitetail and Western world.
Yep.
I'm running the Pulsar mergers, and I
Yep.
really like them a lot. I enjoy having, that binocular feel. I like having the big screen. It's a little bit different of an image, so there is a transition, and you can play with your contrast and brightness
Yep.
to get them closer. But that's kind of my gambit on my main rig. They're both 22 250s. My hot rod rig, my barrel burner's got the TX60. I've got a 1 and 8 twist on the other one. I'm shooting heavier bullets out of that one with the hybrid 75, and then I'm running the Pulsar mergers XP50s for my
Yeah, the
skin.
mergers are awesome.
Yep.
I totally agree. Just a big screen. And yeah, I mean, there's just no, I mean, it's looking at a scanner to the mergers, that huge screen, the field of view. They're just, they're all around pretty awesome in my opinion.
The battery life, I mean, like when you get into the new Vista series, awesome battery life. The battery
Yep.
life is pretty good on the mergers. They run off the dual where
Yep.
it's internal and external. The one thing that I think some guys don't like about them is they are heavier, right, than a
Yep.
binocular. So 6 1/2 a dozen, something to think about. And then, I do think it's important to say too, I love nighttime hunting, but I still daytime hunt, right? That's
Yep.
where all of us started, because if you coyote hunted anywhere before like 2015, man,
Yeah.
you were daytime hunting. So
Yep.
my day rig is actually a 204 Ruger. I've had that
Whoa.
gun. It's the first rifle that I bought myself legally. When
Huh.
I've been, like, I was born and raised Central Illinois, right? Farm raised, and
Yep.
like my dad bought me a Mossberg 500 pump shotgun that I deer hunted with forever. Just a
Yep.
shoulder busting bastard. And it
Yep.
shot great, right? I shot the Remington Sabot slugs out of it. Well, I was like the kid that never had an off switch. So here I am, 14-year-old Garrett, like I wanted to go coyote hunting. My dad wouldn't let me use a rifle because he thought it was too dangerous, right? I had a 22. I was like, that's not enough for a coyote. I would shit you not, Drew. I would call coyotes in with my hand calls and shoot them with my 12 gauge deer slug gun. And like I did this for years, and it works. Boy, I tell you what, you don't give me runners when you shoot them with that.
I bet
But
not.
like, I'm like, God dang it, Dad. Like, can I just use one of your rifles? He's like, no, not yet. So I turned 18. I went to local Farm King, and I told the guys, like, I want a coyote rifle. And he sold me the Savage 204. And it's the real deal Savage, the one that's got the Indian skull on the bottom of it,
Yeah.
And I've changed some things out. I threaded the barrel. I've got a different stock on it, and gave it a Cerakote job. But man, that thing's killed more coyotes still than my nighttime rigs. And so it's just
Yep.
a fast ass 32 grain bullet screaming out of that barrel, and I love that thing, man.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I started on the 22 250. So I started on the 22 250 at 12 years
Yep.
old, and I've pretty much shot one my whole life. And right now, I think next week is officially, so this episode will come out on Tuesday night, Wednesday next week. I should be putting my 243 in a chassis, and uh I'm worked up a load with the 80 grain ELD VTs
Nice.
and running them at like 3,200 feet a second, I hope.
Nice.
And I got a pretty good load worked up, but I'm excited to pull that out and put some dogs down with it. It's just, not that I need to, but just, I'm sure you're like me. Well, I know you are, but you just, for some reason, you got something that works great, and you just decide, you know what, why not? Why not try this?
Oh yeah.
Why not try that? Oh, I want to
Yep.
try this. I want to try that. And so I just do that every once in a while. I got to try something new, got to try something different. And
Mhm.
so the one thing I am looking forward to about the 243 is I'm looking forward to hopefully, that 300, 400 yard shot that you make every now and again. I'm hoping that it's just a tip over dead instantly. Yeah, that's one thing about the 22 250 that I'll run into occasionally is like they'll flop around a little bit, or
What bullets do you run out of that?
I shoot the 50 grain VMAX. So
VMAX, yeah, it's a good
And I've
bullet.
been shooting the 50 grain VMAX since probably for 10 years. And
Mhm.
it's one of the best in my opinion,
Yep.
for me, for my setup. And it just decleats them, and they just go stiff and tip over. Like all the
Oh yeah.
videos the one that we posted on the Dark Knight Outdoors Facebook, and the
Oh
ones
yeah.
those are all with that 50 grain VMAX where they just stun tipped over. Like
Yep.
those are my favorite ones. So I'm hoping to do that at 300-400 yards here, and I'm gonna put the ballistics in the 60 and
Yep.
see if I can get that rocking. But not that I like to shoot that far. I would prefer not to. But the thing I run into a lot is like you get a pair come in, I'll shoot the first one, and then that second one is the one that I'm always like, Kentucky windage. Okay, like I'd rather
Right.
I'd rather have a good shot of getting them rather than just sending one.
And here's we'll talk about this. So like first off, I think I get questions. Hey, what's the best calibration run I want to get a bolt gun? I think literally wholeheartedly, if you want a 22 caliber, run 243. If you want a bigger projectile, run 243. Or so 22 250 and
Yep,
243. Those two, like you can go light and fast on either of them, or you can go heavier and get
yep.
more energy. So the 243, that 80s, dude, are are you going to try to soup it up, or are you happy with that 32?
Well, that's well.
Is that
So
box bullets, or you reloading?
No, I'm reloading, and I found the max load. I started at the max load because when I punched it into the stability calculator, because my barrel has a 1-9 twist, it recommends a 1-8. So I punched it into the stability calculator. Basically, the faster I can push it, the more it's going to stabilize. So basically, the faster I can push it, the better it's going to shoot.
Yep.
Um, and I started at the max load, so I don't know. I'm gonna
Max
toy.
by the book, or did you
Yeah,
just
so
use?
I'm toying with what I can. I'm working on that part right now.
Oh man, like I don't know. There's always like Sammy spec, and the books are always going to give you their max, but in my experience, like typically you're several grains away from max. And like when I start a load, I do pretty much what you did. I find a bullet that I want to try to make shoot. That's the first thing. I like, okay, something about this thing that's hitting my target is what I want to do. And then from there, I'll look at like the powders and be like, okay, these are the different burn rates. And then one thing too to think about, do you ever experiment with Magnum primers and standard primers? Do you ever?
I I don't, but I have both.
So I found like in a lot of my varmint style guns that I want to get a little bit more oomph out of it, and especially if you're going to be closer to that max powder charge, the Magnum primers work a little better. They're hotter, right? And you're definitely you need to back off like half a grain if you run the Magnum primers and then go from there. But when I'm finding my max load, typically I'll go in like 1 grain increments, and I'll usually start like 1 grain under max or right at max, and then
Yep,
go 2 or 3 or 4 above it. And I'll shoot it, and then I check my casing for
yep.
just for pressure,
Pressure. Yep,
right? And so another thing too, if you're worried about it, you can work on your bullet seating depth. Every gun's different. There was a lot of people that used to try to chase the lands, and
yep,
so the lands is where your rifling begins in your rifle, in your barrel. And the problem is that always just changing. Eric Cortita is one of the best long range shooters out there, and he talks
yep,
about this to nauseum. And so I found like the deeper you see your bullet, actually, the lower the pressures are, because you have the ability for that bullet to jump into the lands, and so you can kind of find a sweet spot. I'm never telling anybody to get stupid. Like, don't. There's no reason to hurt yourself or damage your firearm, but those books are designed to be safe. So I think you could probably play around with that more if the gun likes it, right? If you're telling me
yep,
it's going to like speed, maybe go to a Magnum primer, or maybe do a ladder test where you're going to shoot half or third grain increments. And once you start to see that primer pocket crater or flatten a little bit, you're like, okay, I'm where I'm at, right?
yep.
Like,
That's what I did right now. I shot the first round, and then my chassis is gonna be here on Tuesday. And then I saved the next batch of. I went to Now I'm working my way up to
oh yeah,
see where I can get. And
sweet.
yeah, I mean, if I could get to 33, I would be pretty tickled, but if I'm in that 32, 33 and I can pound tacks with it, I'll be pretty tickled. I think that 80 grain is going to pound them. So
Oh, hell yeah. Well, so, all right. Well, anywho, I guess the other thing I'll say too is like you talk about the ballistics calculator. Until I started running one, I don't care what I shot. If I held over a coyote because I thought, like you said, I needed to, I would always shoot over him every time. Like I just feel like it's a lot different for me to be able to hold over on a day scope where I can know exactly how far
yeah,
it is and like get that idea. But for some reason, man, like for me, if I don't have if I either don't have a BC built into my scope or I don't, don't touch it, don't have time to get that holdover, I never hold off for I don't care if they're at 400 yards. It seems like every time I do, I shoot over them. And that's just me. I don't know if you've seen that too, but
I
I,
actually used to do that all the time.
yeah,
I used to do that religiously. If I was aiming, I would get them I would shoot one at 180 yards. Second one would run back, stop. I'd hold at the top of its back and I'd shoot over it because it was at
yeah,
200. Like just like I
yep,
would do stuff like that all the time. And
yep,
yeah, I think actually that's one advantage of when I switched to the 22 250 again
right.
because I was shooting the 22 Nosler for a long time. And then I switched to the 22 250 again. And I noticed that, especially like I had that confidence, like out to 300, like I can aim high of center and bang, I'm getting them. Like
Yep, yep.
that was one
Every
advantage
time.
I've noticed with the 22 250 since I started shooting it again.
So I'll talk about like kind of my tactics and calls. So we'll focus on night hunting since we're on that. But I mean, I run electric calls, but I never don't have hand calls with me. It's a staple. I mean, battery dies on your collar, you're walking into a setup and you see something out there that you need to get on right away, right? Like I I told you about my kit that I run on my chest rig, and then in my pockets I always have a coyote drag that one of my best friends made for me, Shane Jones. Take that every single place I go, and then I have an old Nightingale. It's just a clear cottontail distress call.
Yep.
Use that thing forever, and then I've got a old Primos just howler. It's about this big.
Yep.
It's not the alpha dog. I don't remember what it is, but it's an
Yeah.
open reed. And I cut the cone down so it can fit in my pocket a little bit better. But those are my two go-to calls that I always keep with me in my left side. And so even like multiple times, like if you go out and you see something out in the field or wherever you're hunting, I very hesitant to walk that call out. It's like, man, why risk it? I'll just
Yeah.
grab one of my pocket calls and work it there. Or a lot of times, if I'm running my electric collar and I'll run breaks in between them, if I stop and see something and they're kind of shagging up or they're not sure where it's at, I'll pull out that cottontail distress and just give them a short little burst to give them the last 200 yards or 300 yards in to kill them. But as far as the collar I'm using the X24. Um, I'm running neoprene sleeve over it just for
Yep.
sound mitigation. Not that coyotes are going to see it. It's a lot quieter if you brush it on something.
Yep.
And then I made a handle for the top of that thing. There's those two Allens that go on the top of it.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, "Oh, there's two handles on it." I'm like, "Yeah, but like you can't pick it up." So I made a wooden handle for it, and then I run a lot of MFK sounds, and I also run just a lot of the Fox Pro sounds as
Yep.
well. Um, I think, like most people, your calling sequences changes throughout the year as the life cycle, the phenology of the coyote kind of changes, and like we'll talk right now around that mid-February part. You're right into the Ballywicka breeding season. I think your opportunity to call in pairs is better than it ever has been. Your family groups are probably not as prevalent as they were.
Yep.
So I typically open up with some type of very non-aggressive interrogation, invitational, lonely style female howl. And right now, I'll hit that call and I'll wait, which seems like forever. That's why there's a timer on it.
Yep.
Uh, 3 to 5 minutes before I make another sound. And I will say 25% of the time, I'll have a coyote, maybe not come running in, but I'll have a coyote show up within that time,
Yep.
one out of every 4 times. And so based on if I hear, response, or if I see a coyote, or if I don't see a coyote, those three things really, or hear a coyote, are going to prompt my next moves. But I will say that this time of year, I usually try to stick with, so like we'll use MFK. Tori names all of his coyotes.
Yep.
And I do think that there's a little bit, it's getting into that next realm of crazy coyote hunter. But like, if I'm going to use like a roo howl, I'm going to follow up with a roo howl,
Yep.
right? Or whatever it may be, or a boon or a bogey or low B. It's like, he said it best, coyotes are just like humans. They have different dialects, they have different tones and pitches. So I kind of want to simulate that as I'm opening up the call. And so after I do that, maybe I'm about 10 minutes in, I've done a couple different howls. I'll usually go to like a greeting whimper or a greeting whine. Again, it's not a intimidating noise. It's just saying, okay, another coyote found this coyote that was calling.
Yep.
And then after that, again, reading the scenario, that's when I'll start maybe trying to transition into perhaps a distress sound if I think that's what I need to do, or get into more of your breeding sounds. Kind of start with the cussing match, and then go to fire sauce or hot sauce, or stanky leg, something along those lines, and then follow through the end of my sequence.
Yep. That makes sense. And yeah, I do think that's an underlooked part of a calling sequence is that I listened to that same thing from, I think, on Tori Cook and John Collins were talking about this. Like, each coyote has their own voice. Like, they might not hear like, hey, that's a male, that's a female, that's this, that's that, but they might hear that's one coyote, that's another coyote. Like, so if you're playing Lil B, Rue, Boone, all these you play now, all of a sudden they just, now what they heard, in my eyes, I guess, is they've just heard three different coyotes. Like,
Right.
so to me, like, again, I'm gonna stick with, I do the same thing. I try to stick with one, and then I might introduce like a pair howl. I'm gonna play, you know, the pair howl that has Boone in it
Yep.
if I just played, Boone howl or whatever.
Yep. Yeah.
So
And that's just getting crazy. The one thing, like, you organize all your calls on the Foxborough programmer, right? Man, I just saw it literally this morning. Somebody said, "Can we start a GoFundMe page so they can start an app, like build an app for that?" Like,
right.
it works and you can figure it out, but it is like,
Yeah.
literally 1998 Microsoft. But
Yeah,
the
clear a couple hours.
the one thing that it's a bummer is that it doesn't allow you, or at least to my knowledge, I can't add more subfolders. Now I can rename them and reorganize them, but is that what you found too, Drew?
I'm not sure. I'm not for
Okay.
sure
So
how
I
you
like went
how
through,
you
like,
could
I'm
do
like, I'm never going to use the turkey calls. I'm never going to use the whitetail sounds. I'm never going to use the waterfowl sounds. I like deleted, not the folders, all the calls in them. And then I renamed them. So
it.
I've got like single house, pair house, breeding sounds, distress sounds,
Yep.
like, and I've got those categorized in there. It would be nice to be able to even have more folders to be like Boone house or whatever. But then when I go in and organize, if I'm doing single house, I stack all my like Boone house together. I stack all my low B house together, and so on and so forth. So it's a
Yeah,
little bit
that
easier
makes
to
sense.
thumb through. Like you
Yeah,
said, you burn a couple hours doing it, but when you're out on stand, it makes it so much nicer.
absolutely. It's so nice to not have to shuffle through. You're going back to different folders, different sounds. I've done the same thing where I've gotten to a point too where I've really made sure that I got my hot buttons set right, like
Yep.
my presets. Just because I hate, like, shoot one and all of a sudden you're like click, 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 pushing 10 different
Right.
buttons to try to get to the sound you want. Like, that can be a pain sometimes.
And it feels like you're taking forever, right? You're like,
Yeah, when really it
oh,
took 10
I'm losing it.
seconds.
I'm losing it. I'm losing it. So do you run Foxbang or not?
No,
I
I never did because I always had trouble with the remote hitting stuff and
scares
going
the shit
off,
out of you
and
walking in.
yeah, or like you're going in to set up on a stand and it burned me a couple times and I just, yeah,
Yep.
went away from it.
You can change the sensitivity on it, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, but you run a suppressor, so you need to keep it sensitive.
Yeah. And I wear my remote around my neck and it bangs off stuff sometimes. And yeah, it's just,
I never turn my remote on until I put my call out.
yeah, me
That's
either.
just.
But then,
But go ahead.
but then like I'll forget to turn it off or something.
Oh yeah.
Then I'll
Oh
get
yeah.
to the next stand and all of a sudden it starts blasting and I'm like, oh no. Like, so I just Yeah, we all the things that we do that we don't tell anybody about.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's because everybody else is hunting. That's
yeah,
why. Yeah,
yeah,
no.
exactly. It has nothing to do with the fact that I just completely screwed that stand up.
But I will say, I think a lot of guys wanna run some type of, like, pup distress sound on their fox bang or, like, their follow-up sound, and I'll share a secret that I have experienced, especially, like, when it's a little bit later in the year, especially if there's snow or even, like, a little bit of ice on the ground. I feel like one of the reasons why those coyotes don't check up is because they even when you're running suppressed, man, coyotes know when you make that shot every time. And they're running away. Well, it's like myself. If I'm running, I can't hear near as good as when I'm stopped.
Yeah.
So I've actually switched to one of my hot buttons, and sometimes if I have my Fox bang on, to actually like a boon howl because
Okay.
I I feel like a lot of times they're not hearing that, and that's why it's taken them so long to stop. Like if you think about it, a lot of times when those coyotes check up, it's when they go from rocket ship to like checking up and starting to lope. And I just feel like you got to think all the wind noise, their feet, they're
Yeah.
running through a stock field, their grass. Like you have a lot of
Yep.
ambient noise right there. So I've had a little more success running to immediately go into right to a howl and a pretty high volume howl. And that'll almost work better than pup distress. Now it doesn't work to bring them back, right? Like
Yep.
sometimes you can run some type of fight noise or a coyote distress noise, and they'll lock up and then come back.
Yep.
But if you're wanting just that follow-up shot, that howl as a fox bang or a secondary call sometimes works better.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I have both too. Like I'll use either one. Sometimes I'll use a bite sound or pup distress or something, and sometimes I'll play a howl. And a lot of times what we will do, like when we get a multiples coming in, if it's a controlled situation, right? If they're not just piling in, we'll communicate and I'll be like, "Hey, I'm gonna play this howl, and once the howl's ripping, kill them." Like, cause we'll use that to
Right.
stop them, get them stopped and boom, shoot while that howl's playing. And it seems like that second one or the third one, whatever, they either don't like of course know you shoot, but it's almost like they'll like move like 5 feet and stop. They'll be
Right.
because that they're hearing that sound, the shot goes off during the sound, and I play it loud. Like just it's
Yep.
almost like to me it like tries to cover it up, but and we did a lot in Kansas and stuff too, where where if a single came in, we would do that. Like we would rip a howl to get them to stop, and while that howl was playing, kill them, tip them over, boom, and then we just continue on the stand, and we would a lot of times get more to come in.
That's awesome. How many guys when you usually go out? Is it 2? Is it 3? I mean, what's your
Usually
normal?
three, usually three.
Yep.
I'll hunt with two. I don't hardly ever hunt by myself. I've killed three coyotes this year by myself, and I just don't. It's just not fun for me, and
Nope.
I want to enjoy my time hunting, and killing them by myself is just not overly fun to me. So I always have my buddies, my dad, somebody with me. There's usually three of us. We will hunt in four when we go to Kansas and stuff, but we always try to split up. Like two guys will cover downwind, or two guys are going over the hill to the downwind, and you'd be surprised how many times those guys covering the downwind kill a coyote that you never would have seen when you're at the
Yep.
call.
Yep. You just hear that shot all of a sudden, you're like, "I'll be damned."
Yeah, the other morning just a couple days ago, I was just getting into a stand. I heard coyotes howling. I'm like, well, this is perfect. And I played a pair howl, and I immediately, as soon as the sound shut off, I saw two coyotes just piling for the downwind. And I'm like, well, they're going to run my buddy over. I just loaded up a sound on my call, and I was just waiting to hear him shooting, and I was going to crank it back on because I knew there was more than one. But it's stuff like that, especially late in the year, I think that if people can pull these things out, um, because I think now, majority, I think around here where I'm at, 99% of coyotes have been called, heard a
Yep.
call, something of some nature. Now is when I think you're going to see even more of those coyotes make a big swing for the wind.
Right.
They might stay out there at 300-400 yards, even farther, 500-600 to get around you to get the wind. And so that's one thing that I would encourage people to do late season if you got a buddy with you or two buddies, whatever. send somebody over to that downwind and cover that downwind side over the hill, over the next ditch, the next fence line, whatever. And I think you're going to see it more and more as the season progresses. The other thing I noticed too is in bright moons, like right now, I noticed that those coyotes will take bigger swings when the moon's bright because they can see. So they're
Oh
going
yeah.
to take those big swings to see what they're looking for. And if they don't see it, they might stay out there. And
Dude, I'm telling you what, there was a tournament around here locally last night, and I'm like, shoot, you don't need thermal. You can hunt with iron sights. We've got a fresh dusting of snow. I mean, literally, like even with your eyes adjust with unadjusted eyes, I could look out my
oh yeah,
backyard, and I'm like, I can see 500 yards.
yep,
Like, you better be married up to some timber or in the moonshade, like it's a totally different aspect. Like there are certain times of the month when you can be bulletproof night hunting, right?
yep.
Can't see the hand in front of your face. And last night it was not
It's
that.
so bright.
Be
We
curious
got
to see
like
how the guys
8 inches of snow right now. So
You did?
yeah, we just got a big bunch of snow this week. We haven't had snow all year,
Yep.
and we got 3 or 4 inches the other day, and we got 3 or 4 inches last night. So we got a big blanket of snow, and I've heard so there's a tournament going on in town right now, here, and I've
Mhm.
seen guys post like hunted until 1:30, didn't kill a thing, like, and one of my buddies was trying to get me to go the other night, and I was like, it just snowed. The moon is 99% and it's -5. There's 3 reasons why I'm not going hunting tonight. Like, not that I have any problem going out in the cold. I don't, but my experience when it's that cold, it's not really productive.
Nope.
Um, and then you throw in the fact that it just snowed and the fact that it's 99% moon. I'm like, guys, we haven't had snow like this in a couple of years. Like going out in this 99% moon in this much snow, you guys are gonna think this is daylight out. Like it was so bright. Like I
Yep.
mean, you could easily shoot your day scope and shoot a coyote at 300-400 yards easily.
Yeah. Yeah. And I used to, man.
Oh,
Like
so did
it's
I.
funny how so we'll bridge this into the evolution of night hunting, right? So I think this is a perfect way to get to the last part of the podcast. And it's like
Yeah.
I literally would beg for snow so I could hunt full moons at night.
Yep.
I kid you not. I would go out with my day scope and I would and it worked. It still does work. If a guy doesn't have a thermal, like you can take advantage of where we're saying it's bad time to hunt, great time for you, right? Like
Yep.
it's not any easier, but like I mean, now I'm the exact opposite. I want it as dark as it can be. So it's kind of funny how just right there, this little thing that we're talking about. I mean, I've killed coyotes in the snow in the dead of night with a full moon.
I cannot I actually like seeing this snow and stuff in the moon the last couple nights. I literally thought to myself, we should go out and do that again just for old time's sake.
Yeah.
Like take the good day scope out and hunt the full moon. I literally used to plan my winter around full moon. Like
Yeah.
my mom would want to take vacation and I'd be like, well, we can't go the 12th because that's the weekend of the full moon. Like we got to go the weekend after or the weekend before, like one of the two. And so it's just funny because I did the same thing. We used to just absolutely live for, I've only had thermal for three, maybe I think maybe 4 years.
Sure.
But before that, man, we lived for the full moon, and it's funny now. Like again, same thing. Yeah, I don't look forward to the bright moon. It's not because I can't call them in or because it's impossible to kill them. It's just that it makes it more challenging to
Yeah.
set up and to get hidden and to whatever. You literally got to treat it like a day stand, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So, well, I mean, let's dive in. So with Dark Night Outdoors, right? I think we'll talk about just a quick synopsis. You've covered this before, the evolution of thermal. And so, like you said, I think a lot of people that got into it have done it in the last 5 years or less.
Yep.
And so the real reason for that is I think is quite honestly the affordability. So you go back, like, do you remember what your first thermal scope was?
Gosh, what were the first thermals that we used? Like the Pulsar XQ38, like the
Trails or something
twelve
along
hundred
those
dollar
lines?
one from Cabela, or it might have been $1,800 at the time from Cabela's. Like, and the thing was not good.
Right. The first one I had was a Fleer, and then I got an AGM, and and I paid over $5,000 for both of them. And I look at what those were, and I compare it to what now I can get for the same money for $5,500. You can get one of the best scopes in the market, I think. And so
Yep.
I think as far as affordability goes, I don't think you'll ever really be able to get a good optic for less than 2 grand. I feel like that's a benchmark. There are options out there that are less than that, but I think you're going to be disappointed with what you get.
Yep.
But I think too, now as we see technology change, not only is sensor clarity going to get better, but I think you're going to see more of an emphasis get put into the processor speeds. And so, like, we've watched companies now, they figured out a way to kind of combat that digital zoom, where
Yep.
every time you zoom in on a scope digitally, you lose clarity. They're combating that with some ocular magnification. They've realized that, okay, we've got a 640, a 1024, a 1280 processor, that front end of the optic, but then I've got a low end screen on the back end, and we've upgraded that. You're seeing more
Yep.
and more companies switch to that 25650 display. And I think the next switch that you'll see is trying to get that processor rate to 90 hertz or better to be more reactive like a day scope. You're
Yep.
going to have a more fluid image. You're going to have less lead if you're shooting at a runner, and it's just going to be all over in general a better optic. So as we see this transition and kind of the things begin to kind of change some more, I think you'll see more standards of that smooth zoom be kind of a benchmark for what optics should have. I think you're
Yep.
going to see more ocular style magnifications come into play. And then I think, the next gambit is, because there's a lot of companies have that kind of 1024 1280 benchmark now as their premier scope. How do we make that scope look more fluid? How do we make it look more smooth, right? That buttery
Yep.
feel as you're panning. But I think other thing that I want to talk about is just the evolution of night hunting, is kind of what you had talked about. I think in the Midwest, it's a very different. When you look at the country, I kind of break it up into like 4 different types of predator styles of hunting. You got the Midwest, you've got the East, the South, and the West. And that's the way
Yep.
I look at it. And so in the Midwest and the East, the parcels are quite a bit smaller generally, right? And so just as you alluded to, all the coyotes that I hunt and you hunt have been called at and have been shot at, even if it's
Yep.
not at night, probably by day hunters.
Yep.
And I think it's something that makes us better hunters, because we have to think about being different and unique and be extra due diligent on our setup. But in the same breath, I think there's an opportunity, as you have done, like, if you get the ability and you have the luxury to do it, whether you got the money, the time, the connection, go west or south, and I think you'll find the hunting experience be a lot different. And I'm not
Yep.
saying we kill a ton of coyotes in the Midwest, right? A lot of
Yep.
people do, but the difference is you say, we'll use that number 40 properties, right? That you have. I'm saying that just for a
Yep.
number,
Yep.
it's probably less than 40,000 acres total, right? Probably less than
Oh,
20.
way less. Way
Right.
less.
What's wild is like, I've had the luxury to hunt in Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas. Like, those states just have much different styles of property. So the example is, like, in Colorado, there's one ranch that I've hunted, and it's 43,000 continuous acres.
Yep.
And like that, just as that's one. You have 40 that's not even half of that. So the thing that's crazy about going out west is that you can you can hunt on the same property for so long, but also, like, even if your neighbors hunt every weekend, they probably haven't called coyotes that live on your ranch or that property
Yep.
you can hunt. And so that's just kind of really cool. And I hope that anybody that loves to predator hunt can experience that at least once, right? Even if you got to pay to play, it's a totally different experience. Just like you said with Kansas. How big was the farms that you were ranches you were hunting in Kansas?
Well, the thing about Kansas is, like, you might get one permission from one landowner that he might have 30 pieces of land.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's pretty parceled, but like they might own 640 acres,
Right.
or these pieces they're talking about are a couple hundred acres at a time, not
Yep.
20
Yep.
acres like here.
Yep.
Um, so, and the other thing that as night hunting evolves, as there's more hunters, as thermal's more affordable, the biggest thing that's helped me, I think too, is I was gone for 2 weeks during January, hunting in Kansas and in Texas and wherever. Do you know how much pressure that took off my spots?
Right.
Taking time away from hunting my spots. And I think that's one of the factors that has made me more successful too, is I've given my spots breaks by on purpose and by accident, just because I was gone. I was hunting other places, and that alone has helped me too. Like, I think if everybody, not everybody, but if you're able and you were able to go and take a weekend or a few days to go hunt, and then now you just gave your spots a rest for a week or two, like, I think
Mhm.
that's all around a positive.
Yeah. And and I think I'll go back to something. If it's important to you, you have time for it, or you make money for it, right? Like a lot of guys, the barrier to doing one of these trips, "Oh, I don't have the time or don't have the money." You know, if you're like Drew, it's damn important to you, right? You're going to
Yep.
talk to your family and say, "Hey, I want to do this trip next year." You're going to plan months in advance, not days in
Yep.
advance. You're going to be able to save up, and a lot of times these, even if you pay a trespass fee, it's pretty economical. But again, I'm just going to echo to like what you said. You do that, it helps you hunting back at home because you're going to plan those trips around a new moon, right? You get back, you're
Yep.
like, oh, it's getting bright. I better wait a little bit so that
Yep.
maybe 2 week delay turns into a 1 month delay of pressure, right? And then you go back out and you round out your season and you're like, man, this has been great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think that when we talk about the evolution, talked about technology and where it's going, I think talk about like where we're at right now. I also think too we're probably at the highest or getting at the highest point of where most people are going to get into it. So it's been really cool to watch with Dark Knight Outdoors the amount of new customers we have, but then follow up customers. And so we sell to all 50 states. We sell tons of thousands of scopes across the nation. And I think it's interesting to watch that as our new customers have risen, so have our repeat customers.
Yep.
Technology is attractive, right? And it's addictive
Yeah.
in the way that this thing works. So I just think as this progresses, guys will find out that they want to do it more or they don't. They'll buy that first scope and either taper off or they'll buy the scope and then continue to upgrade. And then also they'll figure out ways to become unique. They'll invest in other sounds. They'll invest in another collar. They'll invest in better equipment, not just
Yep.
thermal, right? Just like I mean, you rattled off 3 different guns that you've built to kill coyotes, right?
Right.
So I do want to ask you a question though. Are any plans to kill a wolf? I know you've killed a bobcat, you've killed coyotes,
Yep.
foxes. When's
I would
this happen?
absolutely love to kill a wolf. I want to do it someday in the worst way. Yeah, definitely a bucket list item is killing a wolf for sure.
Do you know where you would you stay stateside or would you go up north?
I have no idea. I don't know. I would love to do it in the mountains, but I don't know. I guess I don't know. I haven't explored it that heavily, but um, I just want to hunt them someday. Hopefully,
Yeah,
get one someday.
so Idaho is a pretty good state that I've looked into. Alaska too. Alaska is just so far to get to. Canada, man, until things change up there, like I don't know, like so it's illegal to hunt with suppressor up there. Like they've got some
Yeah,
really cool
yeah, they do.
some really good opportunities and they hunt them over bait, right? But I think if you, yeah, I think Idaho would be my pick right now. Like you said, you're out west, you're in the mountains. It's a little bit of calling based, a little bit of kind of
Glassing, spotting. Yeah,
glassing and spotting. What about mountain lions? Anything there?
yeah. I think I would do that too, for sure. I actually, yeah, I would. I would definitely like to do that. I want to do all of it someday.
Right. Well, you just gotta keep doing your thing, man. People will be begging you to come out and kill stuff.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, that'll be fun. I definitely want to do it. Bobcats are a hoot. I haven't found a predator yet that's not fun to call in. So,
Oh yeah.
I'm in for all of it.
Anything else you got for me, my friend?
No, I don't think so, man. I appreciate the time and you joining me, and this will be a fun one for people to listen to.
Yeah, well, good luck. I'll talk to you soon, and to all your
Yep.
listeners, man. You should support the hell out of this guy. He's doing good things.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
See ya.
All right, guys, thank you for listening. big thanks to Garrett for joining me. He was a great guest. I really enjoyed the conversation. Lots of good stuff there. I'll put his information in the description below so you guys can find his stuff, find Garrett, follow along with him. Like I said, you never know. You might call Dark Knight Outdoors and get him on the phone someday. He's a wealth of knowledge and just a great, all-around great dude. So if you guys want to keep up with me, follow me on Instagram, Predator Podcast _Drew. I just started a new Facebook group. So if you guys are on Facebook, search Predator Podcast group on Facebook. Otherwise, you can get a hold of me and I can invite you to it. Or if you're having trouble finding it, so follow along with join my group, and I'm gonna post more day-to-day stuff on there. Maybe some more real-time stuff on there. Just kind of a place where I can interact with everybody a lot more frequently. And so want you guys to join me over there. Really encouraging positivity and supporting other hunters. So if that's not your style, then maybe you don't want to join it. So anyways, follow me on Instagram, Predator Podcast _Drew, and we'll be back next week for another episode of the Predator Podcast. And until then, shoot straight.